Greetings, everyone. Anthony Russell back once again, banners on the wall, joined by, well, quite a popular man at the moment because he's sort of almost doing the media rounds, as it were, because 19th of August, this upcoming Saturday, he gets what is probably, I would argue, a very well-deserved testimonial at the club that he runs, coaches, kind of does everything for. I'm joined on the line by Tom Watkins. Tommy, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me. Lots of great preparations. The teams have been announced for next weekend as well. Some fantastic old faces. I didn't realise Thomas Yanak was still around.
Thomas, well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and hello. I appreciate the time. Yeah, I've got some excellent old players, some current players, some call them veterans, if you like, of the group, but delighted that guys have made themselves available to come out and play. Obviously, through summer holidays, I know it's always difficult trying to get everybody in the same place at the same time. But yeah, I believe Thomas has lived in Solihull. He was living in Solihull when I first came back to Telford to coach, and brought him in as a player, obviously first, and then was our captain for a number of years.
I suppose trying to hunt down now Florida Panthers European scout Andre Nietzsche might have been a little bit out of everybody's budget and availability. So I've been trying to track it down as well.
Yeah, well, he never actually played for me, so he was.
He's in the crossing over bit. Yeah. Played in Basingstoke in the worst year of hockey, one of the worst years of hockey I've ever seen. But we'll move on to kind of happier things. I'll ask the question because the news has come about his signing today. How many phone calls to Doug Schuler did you make about Brady Hepner?
To be fair, it was quite funny. I was talking to the agent and get sent the player and a bit of video, and you look around and you think, well, it looks okay. Check his stats, see where he's played, and I hadn't made a connection. I haven't spoken or seen to Doug probably since he left for the Grand Slam, after the Grand Slam season. I knew he'd been coaching college and stuff, and agent sent me a video of Brady, just a YouTube link, I think it was, and this guy's talking about Brady, saying good things. I'm thinking, I know this fella. And it took me a moment just to realise who it was, and so I reached out very quickly to Doug, messaged him on Facebook, and then sent him a couple of emails, and we had a number of conversations back and forth about him. And so yeah, it was great to get some first-hand knowledge of people you know and trust, and equally it was brilliant to catch up with Doug and see how he's done over the last few years, and obviously his family, everything like that. So it was pretty good.
Yeah. A lot of guys from kind of your generation, and I'm sorry to say that because we're old now. Because I remember moving back to Britain in my first season of British hockey. Is the year post the Coventry Blaze Grand Slam. So yeah, we're old now, mate. I'm really, really sorry to have to break that to you. But a lot of guys from that generation are starting to kind of get into coaching. Was it always in the pipeline for you? Because obviously you've been at this a little while now. You're not too bad at it. But was it always something that you kind of thought about? Because I think it must be a conversation most hockey players have in their brain at some stage.
I don't know if I thought about it. It was something, obviously, I've loved playing hockey all the way through my career as a young person, as a junior and into senior hockey. And I was quite young and did my level 1, level 2, whatever it was, when probably I was 18, 19, 20. And I've always coached, even from 18 onwards, whether it's just part-time here and there or obviously working hockey camps and things through the summer. And I hadn't really thought much about coaching, to be fair. I was still playing in Coventry, but I was still doing a lot with the juniors over here, coaching wise. I was head coach of these guys for a little while with the junior club before I actually came over to the senior club. And it was really just an opportunity that came along when they started talking about the trust and the plans for that season, and had the opportunity to become player coach. I've spent 10 years at Coventry. Had a great time, really successful. Loved every minute of my time over there. But I've been travelling from Telford to Coventry for nearly 6-7 years, and I think that route's quite congested. It's quite time consuming, frustrating. That stretch of the M6, and it was just taking its toll, and obviously the young family at that point in time. So 10 years, I thought it was a good time to bow out. We just won the league. I just had a testimonial over there. So it was the right time from that perspective. Came over here to be player coach of a trust-owned team. And to be fair, I didn't really understand probably what that was and how much of a leap of faith I actually took. And in hindsight, I probably was probably one of the dumbest moves I've made, to be fair. Left Coventry, which was obviously a very secure club at that point, come back to a team that's on my doorstep 5-10 minutes to the rink. But in reality, we were really scratching just to make a living and to be not so much be competitive, but just to get a competitive roster on £1,200 a week. So it was not a lot, and certainly those first few years were very difficult and very frustrating. But I feel that's a time where I really learned how to coach, learned how to manage players and speak to players, and it's not the easiest situation sometimes, obviously, when you're a player coach as well. But certainly cut my teeth and made plenty of mistakes, and I happily point them out to people at that period. But certainly like to think I've learned from them and gained a lot of experience. And obviously that period was, although it was very difficult, it did come with its rewards.
Yeah, the one I'll ask the question because this was something I was rattling around chatting to other people about the other day. Because obviously you joined, post a very, very turbulent period in Telford's history and for kind of British hockey in general. Just give us a bit of insight as to how hard it was to kind of pull the club, because the club was on the floor to a point.
I don't think there was a club as such the year before. I think they obviously they played in the EPL for a little while, and I think that had ended, disbanded, and they missed the season while they tried to get the trust off the ground. I'll be honest, I knew absolutely nothing about the EPL. Couldn't tell you most of the players who played in it. Obviously, I spent all my time in Coventry playing elite league hockey. Had no reason to follow it. There was no.
You're focusing on what you're on the day to day and just trying to play at that point.
The only person I spoke to regularly in that league really was my brother Joe, and he was playing back end of his career in Guildford. So when I got the job here, I really wasn't sure of what the standard was going to be like, how we're going to be, and. I remember playing, I think it was the first pre-season game, and I thought we were going to be okay. I'm sure we went down to Swindon or something, and maybe we beat them, or certainly it was very close. I thought we'd be okay, but just trying to match the levels and find players that would be competitive. For the first few years of the trust, we ran a lot with trials at the end of seasons, and so I remember the first season we pulled it together. We had a lot of players come from all over the country to get an opportunity. Guys flew from Sweden and one from France. So, people are desperate to come and play. So I was really pleased to see that turn out. And we had a lot of good players that did turn up for tryouts, but the budget being what it was, I tried to, looking back now, I think it was Savvy Zajac came to trial, and we just couldn't get the finance together to make something as pathetic as 50-60 quid a week to make it happen. So thankfully I got the opportunity to work with Sammy a little bit later on in his career and my career, but it was very, very difficult. The first year I thought we were probably at times more competitive than we were in a couple of the other seasons. I don't think I said to Nicky Watt the other day, I think we finished in 9th, and I think the Bees finished in 10th that season, and they had probably the top 2 or 3 offensive scorers in the league that season. Whereas I was pleased with that kind of element, but you never got to the point where you felt it was going to move forward, and I think that was a big problem for the trust as a whole. It was very difficult to attract new fans, new sponsors. We had the rink, the Telford Ice Rink got refurbed. I can't remember what year. We played the first part of that season on the road out of a lot of travelling back and forth, and that was difficult for everybody. And we come back, we play our first game in the rink, new building, the place was packed. Everybody's got a bit of a feeling just to come out and see the rink and all the new paint, etc. And we play Peterborough at home, and we get our absolute tonkin from these guys. We get beat 7-0, and it was I think it was the most upsetting feeling I'd had. I thought it was a real good opportunity to keep some of these people in the building. Next thing I know, I've had a fight with Joseph Sladdock and got kicked out of the game. And to be fair, I was quite pleased at that point. It was a real horrible experience to have so many people in and just put in such a poor performance, or not have the ability really in a lot of these cases to be competitive.
How hard is it being a player coach? Because I've had a few chats with Matty Davies about it, and I chatted to Aaron Nell this summer as well. Obviously, it's behind you now. Generally, you're not stepping back on the ice unless the injuries have gotten really, really bad, as happened a couple of years ago. But just how tough is it to do that balance as well when you are trying to be quite an integral piece of what's actually happening on the ice at the same time?
I'll be honest, I really didn't enjoy it. The first year I come from the Elite League, I thought I had a real good season and was still playing well, but I probably really wasn't getting to grips with the coaching as well as I would hope to. And I was playing on defence, made a difference, despite having a huge number of penalty minutes that season. I think I had about nearly 200 penalty minutes. I was on the back end, probably got nearly 40 plus points, and I could contribute. I still felt I was capable of playing in the Elite League if I'd wanted to. But I wanted to try and give others the opportunity. So if you look at my stats, I kind of started after the first season. I started to take less responsibility in games, allow guys to play ahead of me, and I think that was really me putting myself as a coach first and a player second. If you ask me now what I'd rather do, play or coach, it would definitely be play all day long. It must be so nice just to come to the rink and not have to worry about the X's and O's or what might be happening off the ice with the your match day volunteers and stuff, and just turn up with your kit bag, rock up into the room and put the gear on and go out and play and go home. So definitely play over coaching if you had the choice, but I do love coaching. It's given me a lot of fulfillment, a lot of direction, and I'm really pleased and proud of the way that's gone in 14 years.
I mean, you mentioned there about the fact that playing over coaching all day long. I mean, that point then when you've actually realised can't really go at the rate I either used to be able to, want to be able to. That must be quite an interesting conversation to have with yourself, because it's not the same level at all. But at 17, I had to stop playing rugby because my neck just got mangled, and I was just like, rubbish. I felt really bad about it for a while, then realised, not having a broken neck is a good thing as a front row forward. But as you played hockey to to quite a high standard, so it's different, a very, very different scale for you.
It was different. It's hard to change. I think. I think what I probably thought at the time was, we haven't got that much depth or ability to be overly competitive. So if I can be a better coach and have us more organised, then I'm thinking that's probably the best thing to do for the team. And then in reality, it probably the decision was not made for me, but I thought it was made in the best interest of my career, if you like, as a hockey coach. When Red Hockey came along, I think the season before that, I had been playing player coaching, and obviously with the infrastructure that we were able to put in, the players that we were able to bring in and add that talent and depth to the roster, I felt it would be foolish of me to try and carry on as a player coach when we've got enough talent in the locker room for me to step behind the bench and just be coach. And I think it was either the season before that or the one before that we'd had a terrible case of the mumps go through the team. I think it was going through the league that season, and we had so many players missing for such a long period of time. We went on a 23-game losing streak. We were still playing, and we just couldn't compete. It was one of those things. But I always joke that I'm probably the only coach in the world to survive a 23-game losing streak. And I'm still here. But the day that we won away to Slough, I think it was, and Slough, Pete Russell was coaching, and I think they had a bloody good roster. I decided that I had some players come back from mumps, injury and stuff like that, so I'll step behind the bench, and we go down to Slough, and I'm behind the bench full, no playing responsibilities that day, and we go in there and we win. So for me, it was a lesson learned. You certainly can't do it all. I know some coaches have done remarkably well doing both, but I think it's a very difficult task. But certainly when Red Hockey came along, I thought it was the best opportunity or best decision for the club that I kind of just took on one role. In reality, I would love to have played with some of the guys that we were able to bring in over the next couple of seasons as player coach. I'm sure we would have done as reasonably as well as we did. But in hindsight, it was definitely the right decision for the hockey club.
I have to ask about one player from across that period, because he's one of the few players to ever actually write on my website that isn't me, and that's Doug Clarkson. He made something of quite a substantial impact, not just as a player, but as kind of a bit of a personality around the league. Unique, I think, is probably the best way I can think of to describe Doug. And he ended up, when he left, he wrote this sort of open letter to British hockey that I published. So he certainly seemed to buy into what was around him, if nothing else.
Doug came, I don't know if it was our third season. I think it was the season where we ran into difficulties. So it was a challenging season in itself, and we had a really good, solid group, talented group, and guys like Doug, guys like Sills, Weaves, these not so much just characters, but guys with good ability. Doug was a bit of a unique specimen, if you like, in our league at 6'5", 6'6", and he could handle the puck real well. He wasn't going to get. He was able to protect it, and equally he could shoot the puck real well. So he was a bit of a. He was one of those guys that was hard to play against, I think, for a lot of people. And when I was doing a little bit of research. He was coming out of Dundee, so I was able to speak to quite a few guys in the Elite League. I spoke to Bouncy, and he was very complimentary of his shot, and it was going to be something that goalies at our level would probably find it a little bit awkward with. He's just such a. He had an ability not just to have the shot, but he had the ability to get it off as well. He was decent laterally and skating ability for this level of hockey, but he then brings some toughness, and I think with British ice hockey fans, they love a guy that is willing to stick up for teammates and have some character and be not outspoken, but have that character with the fans off the ice and build a rapport. And he certainly did that locally here in Telford.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said of there's still the newer generation of hockey fans are the folks kind of like their mid-20s downwards don't have that image of either Saturday grandstand ice hockey, sort of like the Whitley, Durham, Murrayfield at Wembley era, or they don't have the Sky Sports kind of era of hockey, and that kind of North American does a bit of everything style import player is still very heavily ingrained in the game, but also kind of in the minds of British fans. And the EPL obviously sort of deviated a little bit away from it with having to have lots of European players, but that style of play is probably always going to be popular, I think, in Britain. I don't think we're ever going to. It's going to be hard to escape that.
Of course, it is. I think when you certainly when I'm recruiting imports, I'm looking for something a little bit different from what we have in our roster, and Doug ticked several of those boxes in the fact that he was a giant. He was well liked and a good teammate, I think, for people, coachable. So these are all key aspects for us. But he had that unique kind of skill set from anybody in the league, and you knew he could make a difference. Not so much on his own, but you put him with the right guys, that he was going to be a very good complementary player for a good centerman. And fortunately, we were able to bring Matty Davies in later that summer, and that they hit it off, and kind of that little enlarged scenario. But Matty was a real workhorse and managed to get the puck to Doug in some great spots, and it was a real good tandem for us.
Yeah. One of the other players that originally kind of came in around that point and has become a very, very big mainstay of your organisation, Jason Silverthorne, who, of course, is having to take a step back at the moment just to kind of sort of recover from his injury that he's had. But he has been beyond talismanic for the Tigers over the last couple of years. Hopefully he'll be back, I assume, is probably the feeling. He leaves quite a void. Obviously, you've signed, there's a few people on that roster you've signed for this upcoming season. You can see where you've tried to kind of fill in the gaps, but it's hard to replace a Jason Silverthorne.
I think it's very difficult to replace good people. I think first and foremost, Jason's an excellent guy, excellent teammate. He's a leader of men. He's the conduit between the dressing room and my office and myself. We always spoke a lot. When I first reached out and spoke to Jason, you kind of, as a young coach, I suppose, I had this conversation with myself and said to myself, is Jason going to come here and try and take my job? Is he that type of character? Because you see that happening in hockey a lot. I'm not saying guys take jobs, but if I'm not doing it well enough, we're not up to scratch, that he
was coming
tried to
behind me
step
to
into
take it.
toes.
Kind of
Yeah, but Jason was very and always has been very supportive as me as a coach. Believed in what I was doing. When you get guys like him to buy in and Weaves to buy in and others like that, you got Dougie to buy in, and then the rest of the room are going to follow. And Jason has been a first-class professional. He's looked after himself very, very well. Despite his age of 44, 45, he's still extremely fit and capable. And it's a real shame that he's kind of had this injury that may or may not kind of end his hockey career. And I know it's something that he's massively keen to avoid and give himself another opportunity to play. But until he has that surgery, until he's able to recover, I don't think we'll really know. As much as his heart's telling him, yeah, I want to go back and play. Ultimately, it'll be decided, I suppose, in the weeks and months after he's had that surgery. It's pretty invasive, so we'll just have to see how that goes. But it's a real shame for him, first and foremost, that he's kind of been put in that position. He's been a fantastic servant for this hockey club, and he came here in, I don't know how many years ago now, but he settled here. His family moved here. Telford has become his home, and I think that speaks volumes about the club over that period of time. The people around the area and the area itself. Jason works in local schools, and he's very well thought of in the community.
Actually, just touching on that point, because I think the one thing a lot of people don't really think about is that what is Telford like as a place then, as a hockey town? Because obviously there's a football team in Telford, but there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of weeks about hockey places and what that kind of constitutes. And because I have obvious bias, whenever anybody says Telford, I think of the Tigers before I think of anything else. But Telford is not a place that has much of a reputation kind of at all. I mean, what is it as a place that you think makes someone like a Jason Thornton want to stay there?
Obviously, the ability to come and play hockey here in the first place. It's a job. It's what we do. Same as myself, and same as many other guys have come to Telford, and I kind of get trapped by a woman and end up making this home. And I think I've lived
heavily persuaded.
That's probably a better choice of words, but I've probably lived in Telford now longer than I have as a northeastern guy from Durham when I was growing up there. So I don't know. It's every place has got some benefits. It's not a big city. It's obviously a town. It's quite spread out. It's got a nice enough town centre. I think the ice rink in this league at this level is one of the better rinks in the country, if you like, for the National League or the EPL. It's clean. It's warm enough. It's friendly enough. It's opening. It's welcoming. And I think that's a big part of certainly the hockey side of it. And I think because we've been able to always keep a kind of a semi-professional environment into a professional environment, I think that's a big key, certainly from the hockey aspect, where you've had that professionalism throughout your career. We try and hold those high standards as much as we can and keep it as enjoyable as possible. But the area, I think Telford's probably, like you're saying, not very well known. There's a World Heritage Site, obviously with Ironbridge just down the road, which is a great place to visit for tourists, but equally as local restaurants and a few bars down there, which is great. But we're very much on that kind of West Midlands border, if you like, and verging into Wales. So there's a lot of greenery, countryside. Lots of good, for me, bike riding opportunities. Would love to get out on my mountain bike and just ride. And similarly, I know Jason rides a lot as well. So just one of those places where you feel safe, you feel comfortable, and it's a good place to bring up your kids.
You've said the word mountain biking, which means Solway Sharks netminder Callum Hepburn has immediately got his ears burning somewhere. I mean, you mentioned about how Telford as a rink is pretty decent. Do you miss the northeast when you think of you coming up, through Sunderland and Durham and Billingham and places like that? And obviously the forum's been redone over the last little while, but the northeast, and I hear all of these stories that obviously come through rose tinted sort of spectacles, and it's all tinged with nostalgia. And I've seen video of things like the Castle Eden Cup and stuff like that. What did I miss? What did I miss from those days? Because you lived it.
Yeah, I think as a kid growing up in Durham, with the all conquering Wasps of that era, and the town was very much, you said when you think of Telford, you think of Telford Tigers, and I think when you think of Durham, you used to think of Durham Wasps, and no doubtly, so a lot of people still do. Durham, although it has a football team and it's got great history with the Cathedral and the Castle, I think as a sports person, if you mention the word Durham, you're going to say Durham Wasps. It just had a rink that built character. We called it a hockey hotbed at the time. There was so many good junior players that then went on to represent the Wasps, and that pathway was there for everybody to see. And I think as a kid going to sporting occasion, 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes from home in Durham, in the rink that you train at, and there's 3,000, 4,000 people in this I don't want to call it dilapidated rink, because to us it was a palace. And it was a phenomenal atmosphere. It was some really good memories of watching the Wasps play, and then obviously trying to emulate that as a kid growing up. And unfortunately, when I got to 15, 16, it was probably 15, it was, the rink was in worse state than obviously it had been. And it was just that scenario of Sir John Hall kind of coming in and showing interest in ice hockey, which we all thought was going to be great for the region. And at that point, it was obviously a lot of unknowns. And sadly for me, I never really got the opportunity, or never got the opportunity to play for the Wasps. I was just a year too young. And as they went off to Newcastle, I kind of pitched a different route. And it was ultimately Brian Cooper, Ian and Stephen Cooper's dad, who was managing the rink at the time. Sorry, not the rink, but going to manage the new team that was set up out of the Durham City Wasps to play. And obviously we got very close to the season starting, and the rink was closed. I can't quite remember now exactly what happened. And next thing I know, Brian's made a few phone calls, and I'm trundling down the A1 to come down here to Telford. But I was at home about 2 weeks ago. I don't get home enough. I probably only get once or twice a year to get up there now. It's always just difficult. But I said to my mum when I was driving, I said, I'm not sure where I'd live if I lived up here anymore. My brother's out in the sticks somewhere. My dad's the other side of town, and my mum's quite close to the city. So don't really know where I'd fit in Durham any longer. I've been away that long. Obviously, still got a lot of people from our era of hockey that have kind of dropped out the sport, and it's just such a shame that that legacy of the Wasps has ended, and you feel that's never coming back. There's obviously a lot of talk about possible rinks, possible new ventures, but sadly never come to fruition.
Going back into the present day, though, you talk about legacy there, and the Telford Tigers, in terms of the birth of the national division, have that legacy. Back-to-back champions either side of a worldwide health crisis. Obviously, not ideal, but on that front. But the organisation proved that it was able to kind of do that. And the one thing I think you were very good as a recruiter and as a coach was getting you had teams that were more than the sum of their parts in both times. And then last year it didn't quite work as well. Obviously, there were a few people who kind of went away. What happened, I suppose, would probably be the question there, because you've not got worse as a coach. The players haven't necessarily gotten worse as players, but it was a pretty tough year for you guys last year.
Yeah, if you look at the success that we've had as a club over a 7-year period, and I know everybody talks about the red hockey era. I personally, I can't stand that. We were the Telford Tigers. It makes no difference to us as players who the owners were, and I know people think that these guys got paid this and we did something that others weren't doing, which is absolute bullshit, to be fair. Yes, we
mean uneducated guesswork in British hockey? I can't believe it, Tommy. What a surprise!
I'm not saying we didn't have a good budget. Of course, we did. You generally can't win without the best players. But it does happen. Look at the likes of Leicester City when they go on to win the Premiership. But anytime you win a league, you've been the best team all year, and it's down to work ethic, it's down to commitment, it's down to sacrifice. And for us to do what we've done, I think it was four league titles in 6 years, a couple of cups, and it was been a phenomenal achievement. And you mentioned about the 2 league titles that we won when the National League is formed on either side of COVID. I really enjoy not some proven people wrong, but there was a lot of talk of that those 2 seasons at Telford were going to be a 6th, 7th place team, and I'm sitting there and I'll be honest, I don't read a whole lot of rumor and kind of hockey fans speak, if you like, and I kind of got this. They think we're going to be a 6th place team, and I knew with the roster that we'd had and the players that we had coming in, that we were going to be a top 3 team. I knew we were going to be competitive. I knew we were going to be there or thereabouts. We had good goaltending. We had a good solid decor that could move the puck, and we had guys that could score and compete offensively. So we were never surprised by how well we did those 2 seasons as a group. We knew there was some expectation from within our dressing room that we set ourselves at the start of those seasons.
Yeah.
And both of those years, we very quickly got into a position where we were in first place. I think the first year before that, we were perhaps chasing Swindon a little bit, but there was always a 1 or 2 horse race, and we were just able to keep going, keep our foot down, and play consistently well and grind out results. And I think that's the big difference when the boys compete and the boys block shots. If you can get it done offensively, you're always going to have that opportunity. This season, if you know, people said that we were going to be a 6th, 7th place team before the season started, I would have agreed. So, you know, I wasn't surprised with our early season form. I think we were sitting in 4th place for a period of time. We were playing 500 hockey.
Yeah.
We were, you know, as competitive most of the teams in the league up until I think it was either mid-November, early December. And you could say the wheels fall off or what. I think when you look at British ice hockey, when I recruited the team last year, that last summer, I didn't sit there and think, oh, this is a solid group. This is a group that we know we're going to have to work hard with. We know we're going to have to try and develop some players, and we know guys are going to have to try and play above
themselves.
For us to not even to get close to winning, but to be there or thereabouts, and you know, mid-table if you like. But we'd already lost. Young lad Dan Mulcahy chose to go back to Solihull.
Yeah,
Bailey had been approached by Bristol, and his head was turned. You know, and he'd left. So we were a little bit lightweight, and then you pick up another couple of injuries, and then at that point, I think Sills was in a place where he was. For those on the outside, that was the start of his hip problem. And I think it had been ongoing, to be fair, for many months before that. So he wasn't, you know, your best player, wasn't necessarily playing at the level required. Obviously, we'd had the Jonathan Weaver situation through the summer. Weaves had been such a phenomenal player for this hockey club and British ice hockey, you know, throughout his career. To lose a player of that caliber, I say lose at that point. I know that now, but at that start of that season, we were under the impression, as Jonathan was, that he would be available for us for some games, 50% of the games, if we like, because he'd started a new career in the fire service. And you can't take that away from a guy at 44, 45. He's trying to better himself. He's trying to give himself an opportunity for the future. But it made it difficult for us. And I don't think there's a team in the league that would say, no, we don't want to have you here for some of what or for when you're available to play. And unfortunately, that turned into, you know, a prolonged period where he's unavailable. And I think that was just down to the fact that he was unaware of the process with the fire service and how much time and effort and, you know, physical and emotionally it was going to be for him to go through that training period to get on probation. And in hindsight, it would have been better for us to say, look, let's take a break.
Go focus on that and then come back when you can, kind of thing.
And we tried to do it as well as we could. He was certainly committed to what we were suggesting and his suggestions as well. So we thought it was going to be a plan. But when you lose like your best defenseman, your best player a week or two before the season, effectively, you're not going to be able to replace that guy.
No.
And we really struggled to replace the 2 guys that left mid-season. There was just nothing available.
No.
You know, it was a very difficult time to come to the rink and be in the dressing room. But I'll commend the players. You know, it's one of those scenarios that similarly when we were on this long losing streak years ago, that guys never quit. They were always at practice. They were always, you know, upbeat around one another. And you know, you've got the basis of a decent group. And we just felt we needed some extra players to support us and help us. So, to answer your question, had I become a bad coach overnight?
No.
And Paul Thompson used to say, you don't become a bad team overnight if we lost a couple of games. It's still there. We still had good players. We just didn't have enough good players from our feeling. And to be fair, the players that we had weren't playing at the level that we needed, and we were asking guys who would be third line players to play second line and second line players to play first line. And this is no disrespect to Scott McKenzie. Scott had gone from being our second line centre for a number of seasons to ask him to play as a first line centre, and it's a big step. And although Scott's an excellent player at this level, it just means you've got to move on to the platform and that guy ahead of you, and Scott fully agrees and understands that. So it was difficult. Don't get me wrong. We had our moments in the dressing room, and we asked lots of questions of ourselves. And I'll be truthful, I asked the players if they wanted me to step down, and if I was an issue, but I never felt that was the case. But it was just the fact that we struggled to recruit, and we struggled to find players mid-season. And fortunately, we were able to turn the corner once we were able to add 2 or 3 players, and we knew we had the basis of a good squad. We knew we had the basis of a team that knew how to win, knew how to compete, but we just needed a bit of a spark and a couple of guys to help us out.
And then ruining it for Milton Keynes. Look, obviously the roster's been a little bit retooled, but just briefly touching on something last year, and I'll mention them by name because they were 2 players that I was thoroughly impressed with, and you talk about guys maybe not necessarily stepping up, and maybe this is my view as an outsider. Jake Price and Lucas Price, for me, appeared to be given an opportunity, and every time I watched them with my own 2 eyes, not just watching them on tape, every time I watched them, they seemed to want to make the most of that opportunity, and certainly. Certainly Lucas, of course, as a forward, he does remind me a little bit of you as a player. It must be said. But yeah, this roster for this upcoming season retooled a bit. Of course, we talked about Brady Hepner coming in. We've got Jesse Sutton coming in, and the great twilight of his career that is that of Vladimir Luka. He was fantastic last year. I don't know what he seemed to have a switch flick in his head at some point. We just went, "I'll do it all then. I'll score all the goals, and I'll make all the plays, and I'll just make everything work for me."
Yeah, do you know what? Vlad he's a great person, real good character. When we brought Vlad in the previous season, I kind of kicked myself a little bit. I think we were waiting to try and find an import, and I kind of should have gone with Vlad from September. I had some reservations because he was travelling from, I think, York to Telford, and I knew he'd start the season. Was it with Nottingham Lions or Sheffield Skimmers? I can't remember. And in reality, the first game or 2 that we brought Vlad down, our fans were really heavily critical of Vlad, almost really very, very disrespectful. Comments of, this guy can't skate, he's not what we need, this, that, and the other. And I'd seen Vlad play for the Steel Dogs, and you knew he could shoot the puck, but I don't think certainly I didn't, and I'm sure a lot of the players didn't. We didn't realise how well he can shoot the puck, and he became a big part of that league championship winning team. He, like I say, really well liked within the dressing room. He doesn't speak the best English at all, but guys just enjoy his company, which is, it's funny. He's got a good sense of humour. And last year, to be fair, if it wasn't for Vlad, we would have struggled at times to score goals. He took on a lot of responsibility, and you can say he's not the best defensively, and he might not be the quickest, or he might not work the hardest, but he is a good professional. He gets where his strengths are, and I think my job is to give Vlad the right players around him to make him a better player. And I think at the back end of last year, he was playing with Finn and Sam, 2 guys with lots of energy, lots of skill. Both can pass the puck. And somebody said to my Sam a few weeks ago, you had a breakout season, 30+ points or whatever. He goes, what was that down to? What was the secret? He says, well, just get the puck to Vlad. So it makes a difference. But he has got an elite shot. It's, for a guy of my size, he can really get the puck to the net quickly. It's heavy, it's hard, it's accurate. he gets it off very quickly. He's got a good mix of one-timer, snapshot, and he's a real threat from outside the dots as well as he is inside the dots. And I couldn't be more pleased for Vlad. He chose last summer to move the family from York to Telford to make it a better situation for himself, and that means he's at practice more with us. So I was really pleased with his performance. And you look at the start of this season where you've got 3 imports to sign up, and there was never a question that were we going to bring back Vlad. I don't think there's a guy in the league that shoots the puck as well as him, so it'd be madness not to.
It'd be interesting as well, as you say, your fan base originally very critical of him, and
they were very critical,
and if you hadn't bought him back, you'd have almost been, sort of strung up from the yardarm somewhere if you'd not.
That's how it goes. But he's built up a great rapport with the fans. He's very well liked. He's got this character that he's just a guy that people like, and this Vladimir Bazooka, Luca, I think it is, and he's got that.
Your social media team got a field day with that, haven't they?
But over the years, and I'm sure people agree, you've lost a little bit of the character at times from the game. It can be a little bit stale. So to see him, was it in Skydome in Coventry, to do that celebration, and I know some people take offence at it, but you know what? It's a guy showing some emotion. It's a guy with a connection for the crowd, and in
a very emotional moment as well. I mean, if you're going to do a big celebration, a playoff semi-final feels like as good a place to kind of do it as any, really.
Yeah. But I would have been a player on the other team. It would have annoyed me, and I probably would have slashed him or something, or given him a shot. But I think we need characters. The game needs entertainment. The hockey we play at this standard isn't always the best, so you've got to make sure that there's characters and some enjoyment there for every part of the fan base.
Yeah. The last couple of weeks though for this division have been pretty trying, I think is probably the best way to describe the situation surrounding the Sheffield Steel Dogs. We of course now have a resolution to that. How does this division and how do the clubs as a unit, how does the league rebound from this sort of amount of sort of reputational damage? Because there's a few bits that are always going to fly around in the background. There's lots of moving pieces that people will never see and never be able to kind of talk about. But obviously the reputation of the National takes a hit as a result. How does it get away? How does it move on from this?
Reputational damage, isn't that British ice hockey over the last 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years? Certainly.
And this is why I ask the questions and I let people answer them, because certainly not me.
There's so many things that you could be a very good book, wouldn't it, over the years? But
you get sued. You'd end up in libel court in about 10 minutes after its publication.
So I'll choose my words. No, to me, I was on holiday. It came out of the blue. I'll be dead honest, and I said the same to Nikki the other day on 4,000 and counting. And I wasn't involved in a whole lot of the discussion. I missed most of the Zoom calls, if not all of them. Thankfully, our owner was on point to do that. I think Mike was a key part of that discussion. The league ownership group as a whole has always been very strong, very together. We all know where we want it to go. We try to support one another. And I think this crept up on the owners completely out the blue, and actually put them in a very difficult place as owners of this league. Thankfully, it's been resolved. Thankfully, we can look forward. Yes, there's been some negativity banded around the sport, but it's kept people's interest, if you like, and it'd be good for the league to maintain a Sheffield Steel Dogs club. It's a shame that Basingstoke have obviously had to pause for a short period of time, but to welcome Solway into the league's real good news. So for my element, nothing's changed. We're a little bit. We're down one, but we've gained one. So Sheffield have been a good club at this level. They've done very well. They develop a lot of good players. They get a lot of commitment from their guys who, by all accounts, don't perhaps get as paid as well as some others, but they always stay. They're always committed to that hockey club. So I'm for anybody, I'm pleased for the players there that they've got the opportunity to play.
Certainly, the big thing there is the fact that we've got a Sheffield Steel Dogs team without a Sheffield team in this division, I said would be bizarre given Sheffield's history. We're edging towards the end of our time together, I'll ask you the last question, because just to pull back the curtain for the people watching this, as we're recording, it's the 12th of August 2023, which means it is the birthday of somebody that you know relatively well, which is Dr. Russell Cowley.
I did wonder who you're going to say. I'm thinking, have I forgotten somebody's birthday today I should know about?
Well, it's not your kids and it's not your wife.
No,
so
well, that was just crossing my...
Nah. Dare we ask for the best Russ Cowley story to end us out on? He's so squeaky clean cut now, you see, in his face cage, having to keep the moneymaker out of the way of pucks because of his job.
Oh man, you've caught me off guard here. I did send him a happy birthday message this morning. So I have ticked that box. So
good.
I'm on point with that. Russ has been for me a good mate, a line mate. Somebody I've known for a long time. I remember when he first came to Coventry as an 18-year-old, and really was very, very dumb for the best expression, but probably just not streetwise. I think he'd
smart but not savvy, as it were.
Yeah, he just at that point he just asked some real dumb questions. And how many times do you eat pasta and chicken a week? He's got at that point he was very much a North American young hockey player from Britain, so he had that accent. But yeah, just some of those random questions a young person asks. And I mean, I'm saying young, I'm only 5 years older than him. But we got on very well. I really enjoyed playing with him on a line with him and Graham Schlender that Grand Slam season. We had the yellow jerseys at practice, our line, and I don't know why it was, but Tomo used to yell at our line a lot, and so we called ourselves the Yell at line. Russ has been a real good hockey player over a long time for a number of teams, and obviously Great Britain as well. He's adaptable, a lot like myself. The sense you'd end up playing a season on forward and you go away with the national team and play on defence, or vice versa. You drop from forward to D in a heartbeat during the game. I asked him last week. He came here for a skate on our summer skate, and I said, Swindon's roster. Where are you going to play this year? Because you've got a lot of forwards, and I said you'll be playing D, and I don't mind. I'll play anywhere. So he's an important guy to somebody like that to have on your team, and obviously brings a lot of ability. But I think all I would say about Russ is he's a geek. Doctor.
I mean, anyone who gets a PhD, I think they probably have to be
he's got to be a geek
slightly, don't they?
Dr. Russell Cowley. But fair play to him. He's had a very good career, and I'm pleased for him, and I hope he has a good birthday.
As I mentioned right at the top of this, it's the Saturday the 19th of August at Telford Ice Rink, the Tom Watkins testimonial. A variety of fantastic names from around British hockey and Telford hockey to come and celebrate the career of someone who's given quite a lot to this sport. So thank you very much for that, Tom, and thank you very much for your time.
No, I appreciate that. And as much as it's a celebration of 17 years here, we haven't had a testimonial or an event like this in Telford for a very long time. And I've coached the juniors, I do the beginners, and obviously with the men's team. And I'd like to. It's more of for me, I'm kind of looking at it as more of a hockey celebration of a lot of people that have supported the hockey club over a number of years. The fans, and certainly those people that were committed enough to get involved on the trust and give us the opportunity that we have today now. Who'd have known where we'd be now if it wasn't for those people that really made a difference back then, and certainly paid a heavy price, I'm sure, mentally and emotionally during that period to get it done. But certainly a hockey celebration, which we've got some players coming. We played in the 80s, who haven't been on the ice too much. It'll be great to see those guys put on the gear again, and equally a lot of current players, and then a number of players who've played for us over my period as coach in the last 14 years.
I can only imagine what Dave Fielder's going to do if Deacon ends up in his sights. Tom Watkins, thank you very much.
Thanks.